order at 9:10 a.m. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let the record reflect that this was intended to be a full commission meeting. We are 3 members short. We do have enough for an executive board session, so we will move about the business as we can on the executive side. If we get the 3 remaining members in, then we will cover the necessary matters for a full commission. It seems like we struggle with trying to get a full commission meeting throughout the year. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because many of the people we look around this table are very faithful to be here every month. There are some member agencies that are not committing the necessary attendance to these meetings that we really need to, just like in the towns, communities, cities, and counties. In order to do the effective business, you need quorums. And unless there's objections, I would like to send a letter with ties, a signature also, to community members that have shown attendance problems, encouraging that member agency to make sure that whoever's going to be representing them can faithfully be in attendance for these meetings. I look around the room and many of you have many things that you need to attend to, but you take time out of your schedule to be here. I look at Mayor Wilson, Mayor McDermott, and several people here around this table. There's probably 20 things that you need to be tending to right now, but you understand the importance of being at NERC's meetings. And so unless there's objections, I would like to send a letter, especially to the agencies that are not being faithful in attendance, encouraging them to either appoint another person to be here to represent that member agency. Any objections?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
what's the, what measurements are going to use? I mean, if you miss one meeting, if you miss, because I mean, that could be just face the facts. I mean, next year,
Yeah.
that's not the best letter to get if you're, I mean, I come every month, I want to point that out, but I think that if somebody misses today's meeting and that's the only meeting they've missed in the last 2 years and they get that letter.
Yeah, and I don't think that should be a gauge. I think where you see that they missed over half of the meetings in a given year.
I agree with you.
There needs to be some kind of just reminding. And the member agency may not even know that member's not attending faithfully the meetings. And that's, I think, the big issue. So, yes.
Aren't the expectations to come to the full commission meeting? That's the important meeting, right? So really, you're talking 4 meetings.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mayor, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle every year trying to get those 4 meetings in. We only have one more scheduled meeting, and that's in December, because November, as you know, with the holidays, it falls in that week. So there's only one other meeting, and we have 2 major things to pass for a full commission, and that's the budget, which we all know our agencies have to pass, and the executive director's contract. So
one important thing.
yes, very important. I mean, I'm sure they work for free, but I think we have a commitment to them also. Yes.
If I could, Mr. Chair, it is difficult for, as Chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee, it's difficult for us to come in and put the extra time in, have the executive sessions to do the contract for the executive director, and extra sessions on the budget, and have those prepared and ready to discuss and not be able to take action on it is disappointing at this point. So we put in a lot of time, not me personally, the whole committee has put in time personally to get these things done extra. But then we can't seem to get enough people here to take action. It's disappointing.
Yeah. Okay,
Mr. Chair, do you need a motion then?
I think that would even give it a little more oomph. So if I can get a motion in a second, that would be great.
You have the motion.
Yeah.
Motion, what's the motion?
Just to send a correspondence requesting faithful attendance to the meetings in order for the business to be completed.
Could we amend the motion then with maybe 2 or more? If somebody's missed 2 or more meetings thus far this year, is that fair? I feel more comfortable if there's like a measurement.
Yeah, I think the bylaws is 3, right? Exactly.
I think the Daily statute really mentions 3.
So if you missed 3 or more meetings, and that, because we've only had 2 full commission meetings this year, right?
We had the January and then this one we had 4.
We had one last month.
So you're saying that they've missed all 3 full commission meetings? I totally agree then. I think if they missed 2 out of the 3, they should get the letter. But the letter is, all I'm saying is the letter is potentially explosive, especially heading into a municipal election year. So I'd hate to send a letter to somebody like, if I missed last month and then I get a letter from NERC, I'm not going to be happy with NERC because I missed 1 meeting all year, right? That's all I'm saying, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I understand. I sympathize.
Sometimes things hurt that we need to get the message because it doesn't hurt anybody but the member agencies that are not here. Because this is made up of a region council, 3 counties. And if they want funds for their communities, they need to be here and be a voice.
So if we make the motion, then if you missed 2 or more meetings this year, you get the letter?
I think that's.
Sure.
Yes.
If you're gonna do that, I think it's only fair that you do that measurement for the complete calendar year, because there's another one in the books.
Okay.
Yes.
After this year's up, you reevaluate who came, and then send that letter out based on the full attendance, because you can get that now instead of another meeting, and then in compliance, you got a letter before it even happened.
But this was the last scheduled full commission meeting.
But you're gonna have another one coming up, so I guess.
Well, it wasn't planned, now we're gonna
Yeah, we
have to try to
have
get.
to.
They have to pass it.
Now we have to try to, if we don't get one in December, we're in trouble.
Okay.
So that, are you making that motion?
I'll make the motion that a letter should go out to anybody.
Doesn't it have to emanate from the executive committee? I beg the
I'm
mayor's
sorry.
pardon.
Yeah.
I made the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, that's true,
And I
that's
agree.
true.
I'm used to being on the executive committee.
Yeah.
And I agree to amend the motion.
Thank you.
And is there a second?
Also,
There's a second, motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, let's go on to approval of the minutes. This is the September 18th.
Mr. Chairman, how many short of a full quorum are we right now?
3.
Two.
2 now, we just got another one?
We had another
Okay,
one, so 2.
getting close.
And
That's 27. You have to have 27 for the full commission quorum. So we're at 25. All right, good. Can I have a approval of the minutes for the September 18th full commission meeting?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion is second. There's no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's go to our presentation. We have a regional economic development. Kai?
Let me tee this up for Heather Ennis, who's going to do the formal introduction of Kelly Disser. As you may know, our enabling statute technically talks about 3, sometimes we call them domains. I think that sounds a little pluralistic, but that's what people refer to them as sometimes. Not only transportation, as you know, and environment, as you know, but also economic development. And there was a report in 2006 that we looked at NERC's role in economic development, and we need to follow through on that report. Essentially, as a governmental entity and a council of governments, in many respects, we need to be able to provide the backbone and support for business to thrive in northwestern Indiana. I think we all agree about that. That's why it's worked out really well to be co-located here with the Northwest Indiana Forum, and we both have a commitment to seeing that partnership continue. Heather she came and talked to you briefly when she first came on board, but when we saw Kelly Disser's presentation, which the forum did at a breakfast some time ago, I forget how long ago that was, We all were listening to his presentation thinking this is extremely important for the Council of Governments to hear. In other words, what is the impact that the governmental entities have on locating business in northwestern Indiana? And to hear that from a, so to speak, industry insider of what they're looking for, what turns businesses away, et cetera, we thought was extremely valuable for this commission to hear. So we were all on the same page and coordinated to be able to do this. So happy to work with the forum and bringing Kelly here. And I'd like to bring Heather Ennis up, and she could do the introduction. That's great. I think you know Heather Ennis is the new executive director of the forum.
Good morning. Again, I'd like to thank you all for serving. Serving a large region like Northwest Indiana is not an easy task, and we appreciate you guys stepping up to do it. Secondly, I'd like to thank you for starting out with the Pledge of Allegiance, because the Pledge of Allegiance lets us know that there are so many more things that unite us than separate us, and if we all work together and stand united, we can do some amazing things. I would also like to, as some of you know, Karen and Don have moved on to Lake County Alliance, and we're so excited about the formation of that organization. That organization is going to give us the opportunity to really put Northwest Indiana's best foot forward, to help continually identify properties and create a united front all across the region. LaPorte has a loose alliance between the city of LaPorte and Michigan City. They work very closely together. Porter County has an alliance where all of the municipalities in Porter County get together and work towards putting their best economic development foot forward, and now the Lake County Alliance will provide that exact same thing. So we're excited about that. So as we move forward, it's important for us to continue to improve the story we're telling about Northwest Indiana. The forum's focused on bringing people in to help educate us as to what that story might look like. What is the image of us in the Midwest? What is the image of us from the outside community? And that's one of the reasons we brought Kelly Disser in specifically to talk about that. As Ty said, at our August meeting of the full forum membership, Kelly told us some things about Northwest Indiana that maybe weren't the most exciting to hear, but were necessary as we continue to improve on our story. So I'd like to, without further ado, bring Kelly Disser of NAI Hiffman up to talk a little bit about where we rank in the region and how we can continually move ourselves forward. Kelly?
Thank you, Heather. And again, thank you everybody for joining here today. Thank you for the opportunity to have me here to maybe share some perspective with you. You know, as a native Hoosier, I grew up in Fort Wayne, so I love to see Indiana continue to grow and be a part of pushing that forward. I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective on the market as it is, just because of my involvement in various areas. I do a lot here in Northwest Indiana from a development perspective, as well as throughout some of the counties in Illinois and also into southeast Wisconsin. So I see very interesting comparisons to the three, and I think that there are some areas where we could continue to excel and promote Northwest Indiana. Congratulations, first of all, for a couple of recent successes that you have had. I got here a little bit earlier this morning and drove through the Ameriplex Park, and I saw the the Monosol building that's under construction, and a couple of other larger recent successes. Today, I'd like to go through some market statistics, so you can get a broader perspective on how Northwest Indiana aligns with southeast Wisconsin, which is really an emerging market, as well as the I-55 corridor, which is probably the leading industrial corridor and sector throughout the greater Chicagoland market, and actually probably one of the stronger submarkets in the nation. Some trends, the broader marketplace, but most importantly, why Indiana, and how can we all collectively together, that's why we are all here today, how can we continue to help promote the state of Indiana, particularly Northwest Indiana, through Heather's involvement with the forum, Don and Karen with Lake County, Jim Staten with the state of Indiana. This region has some of the best marketing talent out there and really promotes Indiana in the most positive light that it can be, almost to a point where it's a double-edged sword, because there are so many different groups and so many different companies that are interested to come to Northwest Indiana. And really the root of why we're here today, or at least why I'm here today, is to talk about part of what I see holding some of that additional growth back is that there just is not available product, at least modern industrial product, to allow those companies to continue to move over into Indiana. So this is just a map that we use within the industry that shows 21 different distinct sub-markets throughout the Chicagoland market. It's a 1.2 billion square foot industrial market, which is second in the country, only to LA Long Beach. And as you can see here, the market is overall is at a vacancy rate of below 8%, which is in short brings us back to vacancies that are lower than what they were pre-economic crash, which is fantastic. Great news for everybody. And what that has also led to is a construction boom in the industrial world. In Greater Chicagoland, there are roughly 17 million square feet of construction projects underway. The historical average for Chicago is about 15 million square feet. So we are now exceeding historical averages going back to into the 70s. What I'd like to do too is show, and we can get into that slide here shortly, but Northwest Indiana has about 800,000 square feet of industrial construction going on, and compared to about 3 million square feet in both I-55 and Southeast Wisconsin. Each of those submarkets has vacancies in the 7% range, so the question is, why is there not more construction in Northwest Indiana? This slide illustrates we've just hit our 17th, as a general marketplace, 17 consecutive quarters of positive growth in terms of net absorption and declining vacancies, which is impressive even considering the amount of new space coming online through new construction. This illustrates the general nature of our recovery, and that since 2009, when we essentially hit bottom from a local market standpoint, as well as probably nationally, we've continually improved in terms of transaction volume. Average pricing continues to steadily increase, so we're getting back to what most would consider a healthy market, which is why we see the increase in construction. This is a very, very telling map, and one which the industrial development industry, they love this map. It illustrates various projects that are currently underway. Also helps to illustrate the magnitude of each of those. But you can see that the bulk of the development and new construction is in Southeast Wisconsin and in the I-55 corridor, even down into Joliet. Southeast Wisconsin and Northwest Indiana draw a lot of parallels. Both feed off of the economic engine of Chicago. Both have great access to transportation corridors. Some would argue that Indiana has superior infrastructure, and potentially more underway, pending the Ileana Expressway. So there is a great story to continue to be told for this Northwest Indiana region. And we elected to go green and have not printed out each of these slides for everybody, but I'd love to email you a copy of this if whatever's easier for me to hand out my business cards and you email me, or if I can get maybe from Ty an email directory for the membership, we can get this out to everybody.
Is it on your website?
Not presently, but we could probably post it to the website. That might be easier.
I tried to see if I could find it so I could see it.
We can get it to the commission, and I can make sure you get a copy of it.
Great, thank you. This is an illustration of the construction, and as you can see, the old blue line is a historical average of about 15 million square feet. So we're getting back to what some may even question is what is too much construction, but there was such a lack the last 4 or 5 years. This is really, the amount of construction that's underway now is really kind of doing its best to accommodate some pent-up demand that had been created through the lack of construction through the recovery stages. This is where it really starts to get interesting as you compare and you set Northwest Indiana, Southeast Wisconsin, and I-55 side by side. And as you look at a 6-year history going back to 2009, tracking vacancy, which, as you can see, each of the submarkets has tracked the general overall market in recovery, down from vacancy peaks in the low teens now down into the upper single digits. So the root of the question for me and for my colleagues in the industry is why do we see so much greater construction, almost 3.5 times in certain submarkets, particularly in Southeast Wisconsin, because there are a lot of parallels that can be drawn. It's an emerging market. I-55 is really, we put that up here as an illustration as a point of comparison to a mature industry and one of the leading industries, or excuse me, one of the leading submarkets in Chicago and throughout the nation. But Southeast Wisconsin and Northwest Indiana really have a lot of tales where they're comparable. And we'd love to see some additional construction here in Northwest Indiana. There certainly is a lot of acreage that is undeveloped, and we could do a lot more to help get more development underway and get a little bit more momentum. Essentially what it comes down to, and where we can help, is we need to get the ball rolling. Developers nationally, the first question they ask when you're presenting a piece of land for development is, what is the historical basis for justifying this investment? And they'll look for land comps, they'll look for historical successful projects. And because the development history of Northwest Indiana does not present the depth of data that perhaps I-55 or even now Southeast Wisconsin does, the institutions have a hard time placing their capital here. There's uncertainty as to exit strategies. So as the momentum continues to build, there will be additional opportunities there for future development. But it's really a question of an old saying is that what came first, the chicken or the egg, in terms of the demand and the supply. But realistically, I do believe, I think a number of people do believe, that if there was more entitled land, there would be the numbers and the vacancy, the demand, the leasing absorption does support additional investment and speculative development. But at the present time, there is a limited supply of industrial development land that is currently entitled for development, and that's really the basis of why we're here. We have a couple of business parks in Northwest Indiana presently that receive a lot of attention, and frankly, we could use a little bit of help pushing the entitlement process along. The basis of that is that the users in the marketplace today, the large Fortune 500 companies, even the larger private companies, when they have a real estate requirement, they need the space now in their budgeting processes. And a lot of your constituents here with corporate and even privately owned businesses, their budgeting processes, when they make the decision to expand, they have a small window, a finite window to get the space that's needed to allow that growth. If you're looking at a raw piece of land that is not entitled, that can be up to a 2-year process in some cases. The businesses, when they make the determination to grow, they're looking to occupy space. Generally, when we see requirements, they're 6 to 9 months in advance, which is why the industrial development world generally is a speculative development business. And it's not quite so simple as the old field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. There's definitely science behind the development and the pro formas, but generally the spaces need to exist to facilitate future growth. And that's one area where we have in Northwest Indiana a number of prime development sites that have excellent visibility, access to I-65 or even I-80, I-94. But the development process, the entitlement process is what is in some cases preventing those companies and those businesses from being able to ultimately relocate here. I think we had allotted maybe 25 minutes, so I don't want to take too much of your time. There are some important points that we should get to here, so I might skip through a couple of these slides. I think we covered some of those trends. So why Indiana? There's a very compelling business case. The state and the local agencies do a tremendous job promoting the competitive advantages of Indiana as a state as compared to Illinois, Michigan, even Iowa, Wisconsin. The infrastructure is superior. There's a tremendous opportunity here. We can also all continue to help the development process, make it a smoother process, and at the end of the day have greater development, greater business growth, more, and what it comes down to ultimately is always jobs. So, as I alluded to, developers need help. I had a client of mine the other day that I would never admit to this, but the comment was that some developers are quote unquote lazy. I don't necessarily endorse that, but we should be doing all that we can to help them and eliminate barriers. They're essentially manufacturers of buildings, and what goes into the pro formas, what complicates their process and their product is uncertainty as to process, uncertainty as to timing. Timing kills deals, timing adds costs for carrying costs, and perception is reality when it comes to what can be built. These new buildings that go up, if it's a 100,000 square foot building at $50 a foot, that's $5 million. It's a smaller building in the institutional and development world. So these are significant investments that financial larger institutions, private individuals are making, and there needs to be absolute certainty as to the process and to the timing of when buildings can be delivered. Not to say the least that the users and the tenants, the business owners of the world have absolute timeline requirements as to when they need to get their businesses in and up and running. So anything that we can do to help streamline that process and give some positive reinforcement to those users is certainly going to bode well for continued momentum. There was a slide in here that is missing, but I had included it. It was a slide that actually came out via email to every broker throughout the region. And the way our industry works, when a broker who represents a user has a requirement, they will send it out to the brokerage community. Essentially, I received a notice for a requirement of 80 acres to facilitate up to 1.5 million square feet, looking in the I-80 corridor through Joliet into Northwest Indiana, basically south side of Chicago and into Indiana requirement. But the land must have been entitled, must have been zoned, must have been annexed, and must be development ready. So the question I had posed for everybody here is where can we accommodate that in the state of Indiana? And it's a live requirement. To my knowledge, there are plenty of land sites that can accommodate the size, but in terms of being zoned, annexed, with utilities and the infrastructure to the site, it does not presently in its current form exist, or at least deliverable in the next 6 months. So it's really it's a question of timing. We have to get these sites ready for development to be able to meet larger requirements of larger companies that truly want to be in Indiana. They would look at Indiana, bring jobs to Indiana and future development to Indiana, but when they have a timing requirement that requires them to be in the next 6 to 9 months, it's hard to accommodate that. Some of the follow-up and feedback of the industrial development is also in response, as I've seen it in Wisconsin, is the retail development or even residential. There's different laborers that go into work in these new buildings need and look for housing in those areas. I actually was just in Wisconsin on Monday and with a developer, so spent yesterday with a developer actually looking to acquire additional land up there. And this is really in response to the wave of the Amazon transaction, which we actually sold that land. This is the site which the developer acquired to build a new 1.6 million square foot Amazon campus. And as a result, you've got the Amazon campus, Canal Manufacturing was 350,000 square feet. Bridge Development had recently, just as recently as Thursday, acquired 365 acres, which they then sold half to a user, Uline, a packaging company in southeast Wisconsin. So as a result of all of the recent push, and you can see the statistics show the 3.5 million square feet that's currently under construction in southeast Wisconsin, what you see next is retail development. And retail developers looking to build amenities to service those new multi-million-dollar, $100 million investments, because the 2,000 jobs that were created, 2,500 jobs that were created for Amazon, those folks need to have places to eat, they need to have places to go to shop, and it's, you folks would know probably better than I, the impact and the economic multiplying that follows such significant development. So Northwest Indiana has a tremendous opportunity. It's got a great reputation. It's had some great successes, and there's a lot more room for additional positive growth, I think, if we're able to help push some of these development sites toward development and streamlining the entitlement process. Another area where we could help is helping to provide the infrastructure required to the various sites. That's another tremendous cost in the development process. As roads need to be improved, utilities need to be brought out to service the specific sites. But the ultimate impact and benefit post-development, economically and financially for the various municipalities and counties in which these buildings are developed are significant. I'm not sure how much time that we have, but I didn't know if anybody had any specific questions.
Good morning, sir, and I apologize if you had said this clearly and I missed it. You've been referring to throughout your presentation to the entitlement process. That is a term of art that I've heard in other applications, but I'm not clear here. Could you make that clearer for me at least?
Sure. So entitlements meaning improving a piece of land, what a landowner is entitled to permit on a piece of land. So if you have 150 acres across the highway that is presently zoned agriculturally, the entitlement process would include getting the proper zoning and approved uses for that piece of land.
And if I'm allowed one follow-up, what infrastructure are you always looking for? Is it just water, sewer, and then whatever, in our case, it would be NIPSCO could provide? Are you looking for fiber? What are the kinds of things you're looking for?
Telecommunications is certainly something businesses look for and require it, as businesses do and need to survive these days. From what I have seen, fiber and telecommunications generally is one of the last pieces of infrastructure that is brought to the site, but generally the higher dollar, most expensive utilities that need to be brought to the site are the water and the sewer, ensuring that those locations not just have the infrastructure to the site, but they're within that system. The capacity to service the sites exists. So ensuring that the municipalities, or if they're unincorporated through the counties, just ensuring that the sites have the utility capacity that is required. Electrical services are always something that is required, obviously, but those tend to, generally, it's been my experience, be somewhere close in the area that it's not a tremendous expense to bring power to the site. Now, if additional power is required for a manufacturing operation and upgrading, that's a different story. But that's something, from my experience, is generally more case specific and can be the timeline to upgrade power if the electrical service is at the site. That's something that can be improved during the whatever construction process may.
Sure. During your process, you talked about mainly site development plan, and I'm connected somewhat with what you're talking about in economic development. We're sitting here with an inventory of a lot of square footage of existing brick and mortar that I'll use slightly bruised. But it appears that we can't get people when they come in to look at, and I'll talk only about LaPorte County, okay, to want to look at LaPorte County and look at existing brick and mortar, which would shorten their lead time in getting into a facility. And it always comes up the same thing about, well, you don't have the workforce, you don't have that, et cetera. And you know, I try to point out to them differently. And I look at some of the industries every day that comes out, the Dixletter industries going into other parts of Indiana, I'm saying, those towns don't have anything over what we in Michigan City or in Blair, Milo's area of LaPorte. And I'm just fathomed as to how the hell we get people to look at existing inventory of brick and mortar that we've got in the area.
That's a challenge that we face every day in the industry. Trying to educate a company, a business owner that an existing facility might be something that could be reutilized. But functional obsolescence is a challenge of LaPorte County. You can see it even in the O'Hare marketplace. A lot of the manufacturing that was going on in the 60s, 70s, 80s, those industries have gone elsewhere or gone away. So in other areas, we see redevelopment and we see demolition of those buildings and new construction. At a point in time, I'm just not sure how. It's a very difficult question to answer.
I thought you'd have the answer.
I wish I did. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here with you guys.
Kelly, are other states doing anything to, one of the things that we just leased our last speculative building in Portage, and we've been screaming since we came here, we need spec buildings, and the developers are having problems getting bank loans on spec buildings. They don't have a problem building them, they're having a problem getting the financing. Are the states in these other areas doing anything to help banks, incentivize banks to do speculative lending?
Not from what I've seen, in terms of economic impact to the financing end of the spectrum. Most of the transactions that I've seen, the state, other states, maybe not so much Illinois, Wisconsin has made incentives available, but I've seen most of those been made to the users, the tenants of the world, as opposed to the developers. Financing is not a piece of the equation that I've heard as part of the issue to promote future and ongoing construction. Most of the development that I've referred to in this presentation I don't know if the financing was, obviously it wasn't an issue that the projects that happened, but I have not heard that that had been a negative impact on developers.
The other thing, that the pin on that thing where it shows the border of Illinois and Wisconsin, the other thing that you're dealing with there is a lot of green space versus what you need in Hammond and Gary, which is remediation and brownfield cleanup. And that's the other area. Are these, so it's kind of hard to compare that to even the Portage has the green space and we filled it.
Yep.
So the question is are the states also doing anything to help with remediation and getting those things under control in any of those areas? I guess they would need to in Wisconsin, but is there anything going on in Illinois that's helping get these brownfields remediated?
You bring up a great point, and that's been one of the challenges of Indiana. You drive to get to a greenfield site, you cross the state line, and you either go 15 miles east to Portage, where we are, or you get on 65 and you head south 10, 15 miles until you reach Crown Point, Munster, Hobart. Hobart's had great success with north winds. Hoosiers. But no, that's a tremendous challenge, and one of the things that we hear as it pertains to trying to promote development in Indiana is the lack of available land on state line, immediately close to state line, or that has an environmental condition. So to the point that the state could facilitate and help with that process for the environmental remediation that may be required, that would be an excellent point to try to explore.
The reason I'm saying that is in this study, if we can get help, and I know Heather's sitting over there as well, in articulating what other states are doing to help remediate brownfields, what we're getting from the state is the opposite. We're getting beat up in our toolbox, in our toolkits, to be able to fix some of these sites with the constant pressure on TIF and other mechanisms that we use locally to start cleaning up cleaning up. So any tools that we can have to take down state and show them that this is what other successful states are doing. I mean, we should. It's almost embarrassing that there's that much space going up in Wisconsin and Illinois.
Sure.
And nothing. Indiana is obsolete, yet we're making fun of the states next door to us when we're the ones really that are the joke is kind of on us based on what I'm reading.
And that's not necessarily trying to put that a little bit more politely and softly, but that's kind of the message.
It's our job to make it blunt.
Indiana's it's a wonderful place. The vacancy is low. The market is great. The last thing you want to see is the next 5 years go by, you hit another economic downturn, and you're looking at the same undeveloped sites in 2025 that you have in 2015, because land is extremely cyclical, and you have to hit the development cycles when they're presented to you. There's a lot that can be done. There are some challenges, as you alluded to, with the geography and where the green space exists. But the reality is there have been real transactions, real tenants, real demand that have wanted to relocate here. But even if they're willing to go as far south as Crown Point or Lowell, or as far east as Portage, the land that's entitled, ready to go to be put into production for a larger requirement, for lack of a better word, there's not if it exists, the community doesn't know about it.
Sorry, one more question.
No.
In all three of these areas, I'm assuming there's union construction going on as well?
Yeah, there is, absolutely.
So the union construction is not an issue? No, Wisconsin, I believe, has with union construction as well on the border. I wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, I mean, union, non-union is always a question.
Right.
There are some questions as it relates to the cost of such, but it's never a determining factor as to whether a project happens or does not happen. There's been certainly a number of successful union projects.
Can we add, I mean, I'm asking Heather, as we do this, those are some things that I think that would be immediate questions of legislators that they would ask downstate if we were to take this down and try to utilize this to help us in our arguments. I think those are a couple of things that I wanted to ask, to add or subtract to it.
Mayor Milo, and then we have a question from the audience, if you can take two more.
To what extent have you seen different incentives that might be considered sort of deal closing incentives play a role in some of those Wisconsin projects? Things like land purchases or capital invested towards buildings. Has that played a significant role in what may be some of the growth in the Wisconsin area?
They do tend to play a role because the types of projects that we're referring to here are generally significant, with 100 or more jobs, employees within those different facilities.
Are they what's making some of the difference, or are they just one factor in this?
You know, it's hard to say. Each decision is different. I always hate to generalize too broadly. They're all very specific cases with, privately held companies generally have a different set of criteria than a corporate user may. But TIF financing is always a major role. There was a $7 million TIF that was created for the Amazon deal. And I relocated other businesses elsewhere where credits have been created for job training. So they do help. They need to be competitive. A lot of companies we use that as leverage, but at the end of the day, it's part of the overall package. Overall business climate, costs of doing business, which Indiana does a phenomenal job of illustrating and quantifying what those advantages are, from workman's comp to various other costs of doing business. Those all come into the equation in the analysis that these companies do when they do ultimately select a site. It's a very complex equation and analysis that they complete.
We're getting a little bit behind, but Mr. Nowacki, I know you had a question.
Actually, Mayor Milo asked a question along the lines of my interest, but I just would want a little further. How could you give us proportionately how important things are like TIF and tax abatements on companies making these decisions? I assume it's not the motivating factor, but proportionally, how important are things like TIFs and tax abatements when companies are making decisions like this for location?
It depends on on the specific situation, but the tax abatement is huge. And I just had a case, very similar situation where we were looking at, well, should we try to create a TIF to help fund the development, or should we try to obtain a tax abatement to incentivize the users to come here? Because when you put the two together, it's two opposing forces that can't have both. So that the abatement is generally more favorable to the end user because it reduces their cost of occupancy and their taxes go down. But if a particular site does not have the ability to get the TIF, the building may never get out of the ground. So it's a tough question to answer, and again, it's very site specific. But without a doubt, the TIF situation is very important in some cases and required to have a viable development. Otherwise, the numbers just don't work out. So it's somewhat situational, but in many cases, one or the other is required. So you have.
Not in all cases.
Not in all cases, but in most. But it goes back to what is the cost of the land? What is the cost of the land, and what are the various other cost inputs within a particular cost? But they definitely help. But it's not a hard and fast rule. I have seen developments that could go and be successful without one or the other. But certainly, I would, and without knowing, being behind the curtain and seeing some of the budgets that are at play here. I would think that within the state of Indiana, in northwest Indiana, that to potentially create TIF district in 1, 2, 3, 4 different locations to spur some development, create some momentum, that that investment and that cost would be well paid back. That the multiplier effect and the momentum that would be created would far exceed any costs that were incurred or any investment that was made. I mean, when you see what's happening and what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years in southeast Wisconsin, it's amazing what land values have done. You know, they've gone from $20,000 an acre to $80,000 an acre speculatively. And that ultimately raises tax revenue as values go up, transactions happen. The tax revenue that's created off these new industrial buildings, market-wide, is somewhere between $1 and $1.50 per square foot on building square footage. So the very crude, simple math behind those buildings is even in itself significant before you get into the multiplying factors.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate the presentation.
If anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free to call me, email me. I'd love to be a resource in any way that you may need me.
And again, we will gladly get the presentation out to you, which I think has your contact information on. If not, we'll include it with the email that we send, so make sure that people can get in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, I just want to quickly let you know we're 1 member short of being able to have a full commission, and we have 1 member, I think, on the way. So stay tight. If you can, please don't leave so we can get this done. But we're going to keep moving along and deal with issues. I just want to quickly announce the nominating committee for next year will be Vice Chairman Blair Milo. Jeff Benson, as you know, he serves on the NARC Executive Board, and also Legislative Chairman Commissioner McDermott. I also want to mention that, as you know, each year you get your questionnaire about subcommittees that you may want to serve on. I know that Vice Chairman Milo will try to look at those and assign you accordingly to your interest. But if you have any interest in serving a leadership role on any of those subcommittees, please let her know in advance as she starts her deliberations for next year. I would assume she's taking over as chairman. I welcome that.
I'm on the fence.
But any comments you want to make on any of that?
Well, we started off a larger initiative of looking at the overall organization of how the process was moving of different decisions through the committee process. That is still underway. There have been a couple of pieces that kind of delayed that, partially my own schedule, but also some of the different ways that INDOT is administering the funds of different grant processes that we're still getting our arms around. And so still wanting to pursue that initiative, that I think that's certainly something that many of us have talked about, of making sure that we're able to easily follow the money throughout the processes that we're voting on. And so we're going to continue to look at that. So that may end up resulting in some changes of structure and recommendations for changes in structure, depending upon what the commission may determine is the best way to move forward with that. But just as Chairman Snedeker mentioned, that I think that the initiative of whatever the executive group of officers, whomever they may be, next year would be to try and make sure that we're answering the interest areas of all the different members.
Okay, we'll move on to the executive director's report.
Just a few things, just some exciting things that have been involved in lately. I literally drove back this morning from the NPO conference, which is taking place, in Columbus, Indiana. a little less than 200 folks there. That's all the NPOs in Indiana, as well as FHWA, FTA, a lot of folks from INDOT, et cetera. And we were well represented. Jack and Mann presented on the Creating Livable Centers program, so we got to expound that to a whole audience. Nobody else was doing that in Indiana, so this was really well received. I presented on something I had done related to NARC on autonomous vehicles, and so looking way out into the future, but that was a lot of fun. And then as we speak, Scott Weber on our staff is presenting on our transportation demand model to the group, so we're well represented down there. We also had, just so you know, it's still alive and well, what's been called the Wingspread Accord, the agreement between NRPC, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, and Southwestern Michigan Planning Commission. That's an accord that was signed with all 4 of those regional councils, and we are alive and well in meeting. Those have been reinvigorated. We just met last week in Benton, or week before in Benton Harbor, Michigan, at a Southwestern Michigan shop, who incidentally went through a huge remodel, and I took a lot of pictures. They did a great job, so hopefully we'll have something like that here as well. So very good coordination across the whole southern shore of Lake Michigan. I'm really excited about that group. And then a little bit earlier than that, the NARC Executive Directors Conference met, focused on executive directors. There's a board meeting following that Jeff would have been at, or was at, in Des Moines, and was able to moderate a session on transitions. There's a lot of the cohort of executive directors are moving on. And so just on that note, I wanted to thank you all again for providing that 3 weeks of overlap with John Swanson. That was extremely helpful. And I told him about what you all did. That was very helpful to me. And it was a good session and good discussion all the way around. So those have been happening. Also for meetings coming up at your place is this flyer for the October 29th meeting. This is a public forum meeting on public transportation services in Northwest Indiana. If you recall from previous discussions, this is a result of the discussions and agreement from the settlement agreement that everybody counts to hold this meeting. This will be taking place at Wicker Park. Frank Rabin Jr. is going to provide a welcome at both sessions, and will be providing some information on educational material on how NRPC funds transit, what is the bigger transit picture in Northwestern Indiana, and there's an opportunity for a lot of comment. Again, this is broadly defined, so this is public transit in Northwestern Indiana, the entire picture. So we hope that you will come, that others will come, and be able to share thoughts, insights, ideas, and hopefully solutions for expanding regional transit and expanding public transit offerings in Northwestern Indiana. So please put that on your calendar. Quick note, I mentioned Southwestern Michigan and their office remodel and an update with our building status. We have had an adjustment to the time frame. As you know, we signed the lease some time ago. As we've been through the process, starting with the purchase of our furniture and then now trying to move towards construction, the Portage Redevelopment Commission determined there needed to be a public bid process for contractors involved in this construction. And so we needed to readjust the timeline. As a public agency ourselves, we understand requirements. So certainly don't argue with those or anything. We just weren't quite aware of that needing to be the case when we signed the lease, which is the case now. So I hesitate to put timelines on construction. We were hoping to be under construction already, but now that will not be until sometime early next year, by the time that process goes through. But there is still a lot of good news related to that and a silver lining with all that. When we signed the lease, and when that lease went into effect, we already are realizing the rent reductions that were based on the square footage calculation from the lease that is the new lease. So we are already realizing that benefit. So we already paid less rent than we did before. So we're not out anything for this. The only thing that's really delayed is being able to have a new space and being able to work that in. That's proceeding well. It's just a little bit.
Mr. Warner, that mayor in that city are really nice guy.
A great guy. Great guy. Again, these are public processes that we understand. It's just we have to readjust the expectations. And it'll be wonderful when I think you saw a lot of it'll be great. It'll be a shining star for Portage. I think you saw a lot of the furniture and everything that is secured, so that's not at risk either. The furniture is in the warehouse, and Carol Streamer thereabouts, just waiting to find its home. So that's all good. And then the other really good news thing that's still proceeding is that Comcast is now in the building. We've changed our internet service provider. We now finally, after all this time, have high-speed internet, which was a long time coming, but is a very, very good thing. So that is in place. In fact, if you were connected to Wi-Fi right now, you would be seeing blazing speeds. I'm sure Jeff is doing that as we speak and testing out the exact speed download. Related to that too, we have a new phone system, the big upgrade, new phones, new system in place. And I think it's really slick, and I think it's going to be really good for our staff. I think it's also going to be really good for the public. We did have a little bit of problem in the first day of transition, so apologies if anybody had trouble calling in to the office at that particular day when this transfer was made, but I think the kinks are all worked out, and I think we're in really good shape. I feel like they had more to say, but that's probably...
There was one additional comment that although we have that furniture and we can't use it yet, it's in storage, but NERC is not paying for that storage.
Right.
From the Finance Committee, I feel that it's important.
That is correct. Yeah.
In fact, it's speed, but not high. It's download speed of 4.6 and an upload of 2.04, which is like basically DSL.
I'll challenge you. Last time I tested it, it was like 22, so there might be. Thank you. We'll find out from IT. I'll see you here at 6 and raise you when
High speeds are relative.
I did remember the last thing I wanted to comment. Unless there's any questions about the build out or what's happening. One last thing I wanted to make sure to recognize, it's always great to celebrate these successes. And again, there's a lot of good stuff with the high speed and everything that's happening with this building. Had the privilege of going to the opening of the Whiting Lakefront Park. And I just wanted to acknowledge Mayor Stachura and that tremendous, if you've not been there yet, phenomenal. Not only good for Whiting, but this is a direct realization of the Marquette plan, and it just bodes well for what you can foresee across the entire lakefront here in our region. So just kudos for that opening and for that.
Anyone want to make a comment?
5 years, that's all I can say, so.
FTA capital equipment and for the sub-recipients. That is an 80-20 match. The local comes from sub-recipients. There's no NERC money included. And I will make a motion that was unanimously approved by the Finance and Personnel. I will make a motion to approve that procurement recommendation.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
This morning at our 8 o'clock meeting, we did meet and talk at length again about the executive director contract. We met on 10-1 as well, at times with and at times without the executive director present. The F&P has unanimously supported, or does unanimously support, the contract which is in your packet on pages 11 to 15. I will not ask for a motion. This enabling legislation will not allow me to ask for a motion at this point. The next item is changes to Public Employee Retirement Fund. That is on 1617. In this year, in lieu of a raise, as you know, NERC pays PERF 1.5. We're going to suggest or recommend that we pick up the other 1.5, which is employee contribution, in lieu of a raise, so that the total 3% of the PERF cost then will be paid by NERC, and the employees then will win. It's a win-win because they will not have taxable income as a result of that, so that everyone will get that 1.5 in addition on their PERF payment. So the unanimous recommendation of the Finance and Personnel Committee was to approve this particular change to the Public Employee Retirement Fund, and I will make that as a motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve resolution 1425. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
You also see resolution 1426. The F&P has reviewed in detail the budget for NERC. It is a balanced budget, which is important to all of us, and that there is a general fund decrease of 5%. That was achieved by lowering some expenses, and we do recommend that, but I will not ask for a motion for approval of the budget at this time.
Commissioner Khan, we have just reached a full commission, so if you want to request action on both of those items before you conclude your report, we'd be willing to entertain that. Let the record reflect we have a full commission.
Mr. Quorum has arrived.
Yes.
I will review then the executive director contract on page 1115. It's been unanimously recommended for a 2-year extension, and the details are in that. It was a unanimous recommendation of Finance and Personnel that we approve that contract, and I make that motion.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Man, that sounds good.
Resolution 1426, as previously stated, the F&P reviewed in detail the budget as drawn up by our CFO, who did an excellent job. That's a big job, and she deserves all the credit for putting that together. It is balanced, as I noted, and the total fund balance is decreased by 5% in the general fund due to lowering of our expenses and our payments. The Finance and Personnel Committee recommends, and I will make a motion to approve the budget.
Second. There's been a motion and a second to approve Resolution 1426, 2015 budget and salaries. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to Environmental Management Policy Committee. Chairman Jeff Benson.
Thank you, Chairman. The minutes are, the suggested minutes are in your packet, and of note is we had a presentation by Jack Whitman of a study that he had done, paid for by the Indiana State Chamber of Commerce, and it was very interesting, and I would encourage the full commission or executive board to get a similar presentation. It is about water. It's on the EMPC website. You can get the PowerPoint from it, and it's a water resource study for the whole state. And when you talk about economic development and looking into the future, where the demands are versus where the water is, it's enlightening and might encourage people to look harder at our area to redevelop and not continue to go to green space where there is no water. Anyway, it's a very interesting study. I would suggest that it be brought to the full commission. And that concludes my report.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's move on now to Transportation Policy Committee, Vice Chair Stan Dobis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Transportation Policy Committee met on October 14th. The committee heard a presentation on the Pro Walk, Pro Bike National Conference in Pittsburgh by Mitch Barloga. Stephen Saucer announced that the draft public participation plan is out for a 45-day public comment period until October 31st. A public meeting will be held on October 28th from 2 to 4 at the Hammond Library. Action by the TPC and the NERC Board are scheduled for respective November and December meetings. Mr. Sesteric also updated TPC regarding the public meeting for the comprehensive regional plan update. These meetings will be ongoing until the end of October at various locations in the region. Please visit NERC's website for more information or contact Stephen. We have 3 actions for consideration today. The first action is the adoption of Resolution 14-12 on page 34. The 23rd Amendment of the fiscal year 2014-2017 Transportation Improvement Program for Transit Project. Linda Petrosky will describe the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Stan. In your packet on page 36 is a list of the transit projects we are proposing to add to the tip. This list has been out for 30 days for public comment, and we have received none. So I can answer any questions about the individual projects. If you like, East Chicago, they're fairly straightforward, is moving some of its preventive maintenance money into operating, which they are allowed to do. And then the rest of the projects are all for a new funding source that was created by MAP 21 for bus and bus facilities. So that's bringing in just under another $500,000 a year, about $439 the first year and a little bit more in 2014. So these programs are the first cut at programming some of that money, and the funds can only be used for bus replacements, new buses, expansions, and facilities, capital needs, that kind of thing. There's no operating money in that. If there are any questions?
Any question? Mr. Chairman, the Transportation Policy Committee recommends adoption of Resolution 14-27.
So moved. There's a motion, and there's a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none? Okay, I believe you made the motion, and, all right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next action is adoption of Resolution 1428 on page 37. The 26th Amendment of the fiscal year 2014-2017 Transportation Improvement Program. Linda Petrosky again will describe the proposed amendment.
This is an NDOT project adding on a preventive maintenance project for the repaving of what we locally all call the 9-mile stretch, which is in Crown Point, south of Crown Point. Any questions?
Chairman, Transportation Policy Committee recommends adoption of Resolution 1428.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next action is adoption of Resolution 1429 on page 40. The 27th Amendment of the fiscal year 2014-2017 Transportation Improvement Program. Again, Linda Petrosky will describe this amendment.
Yes, I'm filling in for our staff, Gary Evers, this morning, obviously, who I think is also presenting at MPO again this morning, I think. Anyway, this is a project that is coming to us because it involves part of one of our highways through here. It is sponsored by the city of Fort Wayne, and the funding is under the National Scenic Highways. This particular project would identify placement of signs along the route. It's a preliminary engineering looking at, it's not construction, and it's all, being done with funds that don't impact us negatively, I'll put it that way. I will attempt to answer any questions I can, and I don't know if Mr. Alderman knows more, but he's here, so that makes me feel better.
Makes me feel worse.
Oh, no, you don't know anything either. We're in trouble.
With that, Mr. Chairman, the Transportation Policy Committee recommends adoption of Resolution 1429.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next transportation meeting will be scheduled for 9:00 a.m. Wednesday, November 12th, not on Tuesday due to Veterans Day. This concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's move to Legislative Committee. Chairman Tom McGurk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislative Committee had its last meeting on October 3rd, 2014. I want to thank Mary for preparing the minutes, which are included in your packet. We discussed a number of issues and rehashed a couple of new, we brought out a couple of resolutions that we previously passed. We felt it was important to pass them again. First resolution that we're presenting to the full commission is a resolution of NERC proposing an amendment of Indiana Code Title 3677.6-99B. Basically, this is a problem we have in the Indiana Code with the weighted voting procedure. The way the Indiana Code is written up, it says exactly the formula for weighted voting as reported by the 2000 decennial census. That was great. between the years 2000 and 2010, but when we got the new census in 2010, we're still stuck, excuse me. That was a slip. We're still stuck with the numbers from the 2000 census, and as we all know, populations changed between 2000 and 2010. So Ty came up with a great recommendation. It's a one-word change. Instead of saying population of the municipality as reported by the 2010 decennial census, Ty made a recommendation, excuse me, 2000, Ty made a recommendation to say last, which is a one-word change. I think it makes tons of sense, and it works forever, not just between 2000 and 2010. So this resolution's been written up, basically asking for the commission to approve this and move forward to the legislators. I think it's a pretty reasonable change. So we're presenting 14-30 with a favorable recommendation to the full commission.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, who did the first? Who made the first motion? Was it Commissioner Brightsky? Did you make the first motion?
I did.
Okay, all right. Mayor Snyder. And second by Commissioner Brightsky. No, is there any discussion?
I apologize that I wasn't able to make the legislative committee meeting, but was there discussion on any further changes that needed to be made on the fact that such a large amount of our sort of policies exist in state statute? I think this, having the one-word change is probably going to be very favorable, but are there other things that we need
Yes.
to?
And Mary, we miss you. We missed Michael Griffin also, because Michael helps us a lot. I'm going to make sure to communicate clearly in the next one. But yes, we did talk about that, Blair. We felt that this was such an easy change, and it's important that it's a lot easier, because the other issue you're talking about, where a lot of our bylaws for NERC are literally written into the Indiana code. And to change that was so much more complex. So we figured a one-word change for something as important as this would be like a shortcut. And, you know, the other one's going to take some more work. That was, but I do appreciate you bringing that up. It was discussed.
So you defer the hard work to
We did, yeah, we pushed the hard work off until you're the chairman.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor.
And I think the feeling was too, this to be tacked onto an existing bill,
Right.
but without too much problems.
Any other questions?
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next resolution we're asking the full board to approve is a resolution, the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission in support of the reauthorization of the Regional Development Authority. This is something that Michael Griffin, Commissioner Griffin, had a lot to do with as far as the actual language. It was drafted by Michael. I think it was perfect. We wanted to bring it up again. No, seriously, Michael, we really missed you at this meeting. But the wording and the now therefore is very...
I missed you too.
We can get together after if you want. But the language in the therefore clause is very particular, and I sort of want to explain how that language was chosen. Now therefore be it resolved that the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission supports the reauthorization of the Regional Development Authority. As everybody knows, this year is the last year under the legislation that the RDA is in existence. So I imagine it's going to be a topic in the State House in 2015. So supports the reauthorization of the RDA in at least its current form. The thinking behind that, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Griffin, I'm sure he's going to have something to say, is we didn't want, if somebody wants to drop out, let's say Hammond wants to drop out of the RDA, we wanted to reserve judgment in a situation like that and maybe come back to the full board and see where we stand. So we use the word in at least its current form, with at least its current levels of support. And the meaning behind that was, the fear behind that was if the state, in the first 10 years, the state used $100 million of major moves money that's the glue that holds RDA together. And we want that glue, we want it reapplied. We want the state to step up with the same level of support it had. So we used with at least its current levels of support and with at least its current participants. The thinking behind that is NERC is a regional body of 3 counties, and only 2 of the 3 counties are in the RDA, and we wanted to leave open the possibility that LaPorte may want to join. So I think we had these stipulations spelled out. I'm going to defer to Commissioner Griffin, who drafted the language. This is simply a reauthorization by NERC of a resolution we passed last year. Michael, do you have anything?
Commissioner, I thank you for the recognition, and you've explained it very well. The idea was we essentially wanted to support the way it exists now, but with the prospect it could be improved, that more could be done, more membership or more support by the state or other entities, but not less. And so we were specific about participants too, that we didn't want them to change who would be participating in terms of levels of support.
Thank you. Any other questions on resolution 1431? Mr. Chairman, the legislative committee approved unanimously on this resolution.
There a motion?
Move for adoption.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just have one comment. It looks like at the last sentence on page 50, there's an additional at, where it says with at least at its current levels of support. I believe it should be with at least its current levels of support.
I'm going to blame Commissioner Griffin for that type
That's
of.
correct.
So I would request, we should leave that additional at.
Thank you, Mr. Stinson. So we have to do,
Yes.
Yeah, just amend it.
thank you.
Yes. The record reflect that. And does the motions concur with that amendment? Yes.
Move with the change.
All right. There is no further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last resolution is another resolution that we talked about a year ago. I realize the body's changed somewhat, which is why we brought these two resolutions up again. Resolution of NERC in support of increased investment in the commuter rail connecting Chicago to Northwest Indiana and the expansion of the West Lake Corridor. And you'll notice this is also carefully worded on the back page of page 53. It's carefully worded so we stay away from sort of the sticky issues and just talk in general terms about increased investment in commuter rail. Therefore, be it resolved that the Commission hereby endorses increased investment in commuter rail, very general, connecting the Chicago market to Northwest Indiana in general. The Commission also specifically endorses any opportunity for the development of the West Lake Corridor expansion. I believe Mr. Griffin, I don't want to speak for him, also drafted this one. We did pass it last year. I believe it was unanimous, and it does stay away from the sticky issues about financing and things of that nature. So, you know, it was passed unanimously by the legislative committee, and it's being presented to the full board for consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. We have discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I've been one of the critics about the financing on this, and I think this is very general. I think most people do support the idea of commuter rail expansion. It's the particulars that gets us in trouble. I think this is general enough where it can be supported by NERC, in my opinion.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, this next brings us to Indiana Department of Transportation. I think we need to make a motion that you can't leave. So moved. All in favor? I'll turn it over to you.
It's an interesting time. First of all, let me say to all of you that this is nothing that I actively pursue. I was approached, and the commissioner felt that the legislature probably doesn't have a good understanding of our needs, which is your needs too, when it comes to transportation. That our story and the things that we've done has not really been well told. And so they've asked me to take this role, and it's with greatly mixed emotions that I take this role. As I sit here and look around this table, and one thing that I've been assured is that I can continue to have the relationship with NERC, the Northern Mayors Roundtable, probably MACOG and NERC in Northeast Indiana also. But I guess I asked for one and got three because of this was the relationship that I certainly wanted to retain. The 2 years and 10 months that I've been up here, it's been an adventure for want of a better example. I did not know what to expect to come up here. You know, I told you before that I was told that you were the toughest nut to crack. Boy, you've been hell. It's a new challenge, and I will certainly give it my best effort. I'll be staying in Indianapolis 4 months out of the year as Deputy Chief of Staff, running the legislative program. The other 8 months out of the year, I'll be operating out of Fort Wayne, but be traveling a lot and working with Briggs so that we can tell our story. Let me say this to all of you. You all know I come from a political background prior to coming to NDOT, having spent 29 years in the legislature. This is probably the most significant, to me, the most significant group of political office holders I've ever worked with in the 40 years that I've been around politics. There isn't a person in this room that holds a political role that I would be the least, not the least bit hesitant to walk door to door and knock on doors for each person here. I have incredible respect for the people here. You've been one of the best groups of people I'll ever hope to have the opportunity to work with. Did I get you everything you asked for? No, I'm sure. Not any one person here. Did I get you everything I could? Yeah. And that's what I wanted to accomplish here, and I'm comfortable with it. My friend here, we go back a little farther than the time that I've been up here.
I'm not as old as he.
You will be. But the relationships that I've developed here and we've developed together has been a wonderful gift to me and a real honor. And I mean that so sincerely. I was fortunate in knowing Joe from the Mayor's Roundtables prior to coming over here. I was fortunate in having someone like Chet Dobas who knew me well and knew the contribution that I would attempt to make. I know coming out of a political environment, folks will be suspicious of your motives, and you sure the hell should be. My motives have been pure, and that is just to provide the best service that we can provide. I leave here knowing that this year, the Indiana Department of Transportation Northwest will have a lot more people in order to deal with winter operations, and it's very difficult to increase your numbers. But through some hard work, we've been able to get more people on board, prepare for winter operations. We are going to be much better prepared. My replacement will be a gentleman named Rick Powers. Rick is one of Greg Ballard, the mayor of Indianapolis' top people. I think you'll find him accessible. He's organized, unlike me. He's a 20-year veteran of the Marine Corps. He's also worked in other significant roles. He's a very disciplined individual. But by the same token, as we go forward, if you have a problem that I can help you with, I will get all my contact information to Ty, and Ty can get it out to all of you. I'll certainly be there for you. Like I said, it was a very tough decision, but I think this is a place where I can serve well also and maybe make a difference. Anything we gain, I think financially, you all gain too if it deals with gas tax and things like that. So there's opportunities for all of us in this endeavor. But I find it sad to be leaving the area. I so enjoy working with everyone here and feel so comfortable. And the sincerity of what everyone brings to the table does not escape me also. I know I can sit down with any person here and there isn't a hidden agenda. And I so appreciate it. I appreciate the give and take that Mayor Tom and I have. He keeps me on that time, Bob. And he keeps me on my toes, which I think is important. Next month, I will be bringing my replacement, to introduce him to you, if I might have the pleasure. And I just want you all to know that I have incredible appreciation for who you are and what you do and how difficult that is. And just having had the opportunity to work with you is a great honor. And thank you so very much for accepting me for who I am. I'm not sure my parents would need to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say, we're really excited that Bob Alderman is moving up, because now, when he got us everything he could, now he should be able to get us everything we want.
If I could, I think it might have been the very first Nursery Commission meeting when you all passed a resolution supporting and appreciating Bob. And I have to confess, not having worked with him yet, I was like, it was fun. But having now worked with him over this time, I can definitely see how that resolution was extremely well-deserved. And I have heard numerous times offline in private settings how much you all appreciate the work that Bob's done for you. As I told Bob, and as I replied in email too, I think one of the good things about this is that what he's been able to do here, he cannot do on the state level, and it's great to know that we have an ally who understands Northwestern Indiana in Indianapolis, and to be able to convey what's happening here, and so we really appreciate that. And towards that end, we have a plaque we'd like to present to you for your service. You can stand up. Great.
It's made of asphalt.
It says, in recognition and appreciation of outstanding service and commitment to the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, presented to Bob Alderman.
Just because I was his big supporter during that baby fest.
But there's actually more. Nancy Adams, bless her heart, wanted to engage something to appreciate Bob, and has baked in multiple ways for us today. So there's a cake for him. There are also cupcakes being brought out on the table to celebrate Bob and his service.
Yesterday, and he's very excited for you to be in charge. And he said you're going to be great with the public as far as educating them about India. So.
Thank you. You know the worst part is I'm trying to really pull this district together and have everything just right for my replacement, because he's coming in right at winter time. And you'll be happy to know we're going to double the snow rate on 40. But now I have, like, folks from the governor's office saying, hey, Bob, can you do this for me? And they don't realize that I'm trying to continue in this role until we get this other person in place and get their feet on the ground. A lot of stuff coming at me. Yesterday morning, I got up at 3:30 in the morning in order to be at Crawfordsville at 8:30. It was an hour later, but local time, 3:30 in the morning to get down there. It gets a little hectic with that. But I so appreciate all of your kindness. And Nancy, obviously you haven't heard, I just got back in this suit for the first time. Thank you all so much for your kindness.
Thank you.
All right, quickly we'll go, is there any other business or announcements? Mr. Carnahan.
The Indiana Association of Cities and Towns Roundtable offers town officials, council members, clerk treasurers, managers, and department heads a casual environment to learn about the latest government issues and to share ideas and experiences with your neighbor communities. And that will be held October 22nd at New Chicago, and I would hope that we would have a big crowd there, right?
So do I.
One other thing, I had talked about, we haven't had the Indiana Association of Cities and Towns Conference up here. They say we don't have a big enough facility. But I have some people that are telling me that in Michigan City that we have a big enough facility that we ought to try to attract them back up and host it with Lake, Porter, and LaPorte County being the co-hosts. So that's something else. And I need 3 judges for my Parade of Lights in Cedar Lake on November 22nd. So if any of you would like to be my judge, see me after the meeting. Thank you.
All right. All right. Quickly, want to remind, we have cupcakes over here that Nancy wants to make sure everybody grabs before we leave. So we'll move to Jim. We got a lot of hungry people, so please be brief.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jim Nowacki. I'm a resident of the city of Gary, Indiana. I did attend the legislative committee this month, and where we talked about the RDA. I just, several times I've mentioned I oppose the reauthorization of the RDA for several points. In our city, we've received over $70 million from the RDA. We've contributed about $35 million over 10 years. We're a little delinquent in our payments to date, but I'm sure we'll get caught up for that. But the net result of the $70 million invested in our city has had very little results. $40 million at the airport, about $28 million at a park. Airport largely vacant, the park largely vacant, and both of them creating a tremendous burden on the tax revenue of our city. The airport is supported by a TIF district. I think it was mentioned, we had the presentation. It's the largest TIF district in the state, almost 10 miles. It's the only TIF that has both commercial and residential property that captures that TIF money for the exclusive purpose of supporting the airport. So it's a huge burden for our city. The RDA has contributed $28 million to a park. One of the purposes of it, the lakefront, we have buses, we have planes, but the net result is contributes to the burden of our taxpayers in our city. So when we talk about the support, the 35 million, you know, not just from our city, and several of you are talking about reauthorizing it. It's coming, you authorize it. If it's such a good deal, you know, maybe some of the other communities would like to take Gary's position in that. I would report to this committee that in 1974, our redevelopment commission identified a disaster in our city. We had 800 vacant abandoned buildings, 800. And it was urgent that we do something with those vacant buildings. 40 years later, we have 10,000 vacant buildings. In the 10 years that the RDA has been creating its economic development in Gary, Indiana, we've lost 25,000 people. So when we have the change, the legislative change, to have the weighted vote changed in this organization, we've lost 25,000 people, even though the RDA has invested $70 million in our city. So we look at the additional 800,000 taken from our city as part of the CD money for the extension of the railroad. $800,000 for the next 30 years. If I were to suggest to this city or to this committee that over $4 million will be taken from our city, taxpayers in our city, to sponsor the RDA railroad expansion to Munster and wherever that railroad is going, I would tell you there is zero support among citizens in our city for this. So I would urge the commission altogether to look carefully at reauthorizing that RDA. If you want to have the same level of support with the state kicking in $100,000, and we support that, it would be impossible for me to oppose that. But I had made a suggestion at the legislative committee that rather than simply have the authorization as it exists, we should look at what was the original intentions of the RDA and maybe make some changes. Maybe improving lakefront parks should be dropped now. We've already got new parks in East Chicago and in Hammond and in Whiting and Gary and Portage. We've already got the new parks. Maybe we've done enough over there. Maybe the airport needs to be dropped. Maybe we need to have some new priorities or some new programs or some new, change the rationalization for the RDA, give it some new responsibilities. They've messed up the bus service, they've screwed up the airport, they've, with the exception of the parks, that's about the only thing that they've had some success in. But I say that as a net result in my city, we've lost population, more abandonment, and very little economic development. This was what they were responsible for. So I'm going to urge to look carefully when we authorize it. And if the other communities who are so excited about the RDA, they want to kick in $3.5 million, have at it. But we need that money in our city for streets, sidewalks, gutters, and general maintenance. We can't give our police and fire people a raise because we're doing too much regional stuff. We're losing population, on and on it's going to go. So I'm I don't want to take any more time, but anyways, I'm sick of the RDA and I'm going to oppose it. Thank you.
Yes.
Again, I've neglected to introduce Roger Miller and welcome him to the commission for Potawatomi Park. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
I just want to quickly say thank you to everyone that made the effort to be here today. So we did get our full commission in. And Mayor, your question about it is 3 full commission meetings that action can be taken. One of the issues is there is about 4 or 5 communities that have left their seat vacant for quite a while. The guidelines say that it's supposed to be replaced promptly, and so those are some of the issues that we probably need to tackle. So I just wanted to clarify that. So
And it
again,
says after 3, you shall. send
yes,
consent.
yes, exactly.
Is that 3 full commission or 3?
It says 3 meetings.
Full
So it's
commission.
perceived to be full commission.
Right. Which means you can go a year without showing up.
Right. Exactly.
But I think, in addition to the attendance, even more egregious may be the fact that they don't even appoint anybody to be here.
And that's part of the issue. There's a lot of seats.
At least appoint somebody.
Well, Mr. Chair, I mean, I'm not on the executive committee, but I still show up. I think there's a lot of people, just because it's executive committee, you see people around the table all the time.
Right.
So just
And they're
because
faithful.
you're not on the executive committee doesn't mean you don't have to show up.
Right.
If
Okay.
I may, in my
Yes.
case, we're all part-time people, okay, at council, and the lady who was here took a job, she couldn't make it. Council said, well, you're self-employed, you should be able to do it. And then what happened was, I was on vacation, I finally started getting stuff in June, and all 3 meetings, June, July, and August, I was gone. So here I am now, so.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that, yes. Entertain a motion to adjourn? You have it. All right.
Adjourn the companies.
Yeah.
I forgot.